everyone. Welcome to the PrepZone Podcast. I'm your host, Estevao Divino, and I'm delighted to have you with me today, Dr. Jenna Wider. Jenna, how are you?
Hi, Steve. Great to see you.
Oh, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm so excited and honored to have you. I think of all the guests, you're definitely the most accomplished one I've had on. And I do want to run a little bit so just everyone can know, if they don't know yet. Dr. Wider appeared on today's show, CBS News, ABC News Nightline, CNN Headline, Fox, Good Day New York, Huffington Post, and the Bennett Show, and now the PrepZone Podcast.
Yes, exactly.
You are the resident doctor on the Just Jenny on Sirius XM and Loveline.
Yes.
You've been on Bloomberg Radio, Howard Stern. Oh, God, I can't imagine what that was like.
A little crazy.
Right. The Oprah Radio, WABC Talk Radio, and many other stations around the country. You are the author of 4 books, The Savvy Woman Patient, The Doctor's Complete Guide to College Girls' Health Guide, The New Mom's Survival Guide, and Got Teens, The Dr. Mom's Guide to Sexuality. And I think you have a book with Social Media and Other Adolescence Realities, right? Is that a book?
Yeah, that's the Got Teens book. It's a parenting book for parents who have teens and adolescents.
Wow, okay, that's amazing. I mean, you've been an invited guest and lecturer at many workshops, variety of hospitals, women's centers. You were a graduate of Princeton University, and you got your medical degree from Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City.
Yes.
In the past, you have worked as senior editor at Medscape, CBS Health Watch, and as the managing director of the health channel at iVillage.com.
Yeah.
Anything I missed there?
No.
And you are the girls' tennis coach.
I am.
Now, explain to me, what is your connection to tennis?
So I am a lifelong tennis player. I come from a family of avid tennis fans and tennis players. Both of my brothers played at Princeton. I was a tennis player in high school. I played a lot of sports, but my two big sports in high school were lacrosse and tennis. And it's funny because I grew up in New York, and in New York, girls' tennis is in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, like, it competes with football.
Correct. So, and then lacrosse is in the spring. But in Connecticut, and by the way, in New York, it's still that way. I don't know.
Really?
If you knew
I did not know that.
Yeah,
okay.
So in New York, and it's great because you don't have to split the courts with the boys,
Yes.
which makes a lot of sense to me.
It's got to do with volleyball. It's good. Yeah, right.
Correct.
Exactly.
So, yeah, exactly, because you have a lot of overlap with those two sports. But so I was a big player in New York. I, won the states in New York. I was very, very competitive, and I was recruited to 2 Division III schools for tennis. And my dad told me I wasn't going to college to play tennis. So I went to Princeton and really missed playing athletics. So I played a year of lacrosse at Princeton, and then I missed tennis. So I walked into the tennis office at Princeton, and the coach is a woman by the name of Louise Gengler. She's huge in the sport of tennis. And I was going to talk to her about possibly trying out for the tennis team. And the squash coach was in the office. It's a crazy story.
Gosh.
And her name was Betty Howe Constable. And if you know the world of squash, her middle name is, her maiden name is Howe. And the Howe Cup is an enormous squash tournament. So she is like an icon in the world of women's and men's squash. And she invited me on the court and knew that I was a racket sports player, and then invited me on to this Division I, Ivy squash team, and I played 3 years of squash at Princeton. So
how close is squash to tennis? I've always wondered that, and because you opened that up before we get in, I wanted to ask that.
So there's definitely overlap. Like if you are a racket sports player, like nowadays you can, play, and your hand-eye coordination is amazing. So you can go from tennis to squash. Some people play racquetball, ping pong, and now pickleball. Right? Or padel, for example. Padel is a big. Have you seen that, Steve?
I don't know what padel is.
I gotta take you out
okay,
of the padel court.
all right.
So that's like this insane racket sport, and there's it looks like it's a very fast-moving squash, tennis, ping pong. A lot of the tennis pros are playing now. It's really big in Europe. It's sort of exploding.
Is that the one where it
Connecticut.
bounces the ball back? Okay, so I think I've seen on Instagram a little bit of it. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But so you can go back and forth. But I feel like as an adult, it's harder to go from squash to tennis. Like we have some kids that play on the squash team. One of our varsity players plays on both varsity squash and tennis. So the earlier you learn the sports, the easier it is. But some of the skill sets are the same. Like a lot of the hand-eye coordination and efficiency in tennis and racket sports.
Yeah, I mean, I love racket sports. I think they're good. I mean, it's kind of lonely out there sometimes. It can be.
Totally.
Yeah, but
yes.
it's really fun. And talk about the team this year. I know it was a quick FSEC, but you guys have, the state coming up, and we've talked about how young team you are. Talk about how the team has been this year. What's been your experience like?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. If you go back to when I took over the tennis team, this is my 3rd season coaching. So
Okay.
Paco Fabian was the head tennis coach for girls. Yeah, amazing guy. He ended up having to leave with very short notice. So a friend of mine whose daughter was the captain of the tennis team asked me, would I want to coach the tennis team? We play tennis together. And I inherited an unbelievable team. On that team, there was a Division I recruit, Division III recruit. I was, inherited this mind-blowing team with 6 seniors who were just stellar. And so we had an incredible year that year. And then my second year, we still had some very, very strong tournament players. We lost another 6. So between the time of this season, we've lost 12 starting varsity players. So we are definitely in a rebuilding year. We took 3 or 4 really solid freshmen this year, and it's really a young team. And we have some veteran talent on the team, but it's definitely a rebuilding year. And you start to see some of the other towns really pick up. And the New Canaan head coach, Catherine Walker, was telling me, because when I first started New Canaan, we would annihilate them 6-1. And now we're getting annihilated back. And it was 6-1.
It's a curve, right? It goes up and down.
It just goes around in a circle. So, you sort of get used to that and you want to build up the team. And it's a pleasure to coach, but it's a different experience this year.
For sure. And it's like managing that, you said, it's tough. I always feel like it's tough to win and rebuild at the same time.
Correct.
Right? Because it's like, what do you folks? So talk about how that's been for you, the experience of rebuilding. And you still had a very good season. You still have the states coming up. There's still a lot going on.
Yeah.
So how is the experience of rebuilding while still winning?
Right. So I think, our overall record in the preseason was 12-5, which I think is a pretty good end to what has been a tough season. The competition, as we
I'm sorry, 12-5 is not. I think it's a great season. 12-5. I've lived to 3-win seasons, but go ahead.
So yeah, I'm thrilled with it. Yeah. So as we are rebuilding, some of the other teams are at the pinnacle of they've just hit their stride. As I mentioned, New Canaan is incredibly strong. Greenwich girls tennis is almost unbeatable this season. They were undefeated. They will definitely win the FCAC unless, someone gets struck by lightning. And in addition, I think they're going to be a huge contender in the team states competition. But for us, I really think, as we discussed before we started taping, part of the joys and the challenge of coaching is understanding that you go with these individual wins. And so we create goals for ourselves that are attainable goals, that we want personal wins for the season that aren't necessarily going to be an undefeated season or an FCAC championship. But can we create goals for ourselves and do a little bit better each time we play these teams again? Or if somebody is working on a particular, skill set, can they attain that and recognize that and overcome a challenge personally? And that will become a personal win. And so for me as a coach, it's important to have personal wins along the way when you sort of recognize, okay, the FCAC championship is probably not doable. Even if you shook that magic 8 ball and it said, all signs point to yes, it's probably going to be a no. But can you have personal wins with these girls and have them achieve something that they want to set as a goal and then attain it, and then it becomes something that is a personal victory, which I think is just as important as a team victory.
I totally agree, because it builds from year to year, and every team is different, right? I mean, from year to year. And the tennis team, you're a big squad. You have a lot of varsity players, a lot of JV players.
Yes.
Any keys to that continued success of having so many players try out? I think you're still a cut sport, right? I mean, you get too many people to come out, unfortunately, but it's a good thing.
Right.
But anything that you point out, say, is it off the court, is it on the court, that you guys point to the success of the program?
I think, I think the girls are incredibly close. It's a very, very solid team. I feel like it is very important because Staples is such a high-performing school, and the kids are under an unbelievable amount of stress. And so with my background being focused on adolescent and women's health, I find to be an asset for me because I can recognize that a lot of these scholar athletes have a ton of other things going on. And so balance is very, very key to me as a coach. And I really try to push that for the girls, and I really want them to enjoy it. I want tennis to be an outlet for them, not an extra challenge, an extra stressor, because I think they're under so much stress to begin with. And that is probably the underlying key to the success of our team. If you can keep it fun, as you mentioned before, it's an individual sport, and it's also a team. So that poses a challenge for a coach as well, right? Because you need to perform on your own. Like as a lacrosse player, it's much easier to get on a field, and if someone's feeling down, you can pat them on the back and, bolster them up. when you're on a team sport, but an individual competition where you're in a singles situation, the victory really comes if you feel like you've played your best. Even if, no matter what the score is, if you come off feeling like you played your best, and I always tell the girls that, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. If you come off feeling I did the best that I could do, it's a personal win. And
True.
I think that bolsters this program in a sense, because, it's an inch by inch kind of situation, especially in a rebuilding year. And balance is very key for these kids because a lot of them are high-performing athletes, but they're high-performing students as well. And you have to strike a really healthy balance.
Yeah, I always like to, and everybody I think does call them student athletes, right? Student
Yes.
first and athlete second. So managing that level, and your season is very condensed. It goes by really fast.
It's like you're shot out of the gate, and then before you know it, the preseason is finished.
Yeah, it goes crazy. And as you look at the team this year, what do you think has been the biggest accomplishment, if you can put on court or off court, from everything that happened this rebuilding year for you?
I think the flexibility of the girls. I think recognizing that in some of our tougher matches, the lineup that we had was going to be a lineup that may not necessarily get as many victories in our pocket as the traditional lineup. So the girls were very flexible. For example, like in some of our matches, we played against Darien, which is a huge rival for us. Since I've been here, Darien tends to be a major rival of Staples High School overall, no matter what sport you're playing.
Absolutely.
And so recognizing that Darien was very top heavy. So their biggest strength was in their singles lineup. Their 1 through 3 is very, very tough. Their top girl, Sarah Donnelly, was recruited to Washington and Lee. She was almost unbeatable for us this year. So I took Tatum Keefe, who's our freshman, she's a freshman superstar. I took her out of 1 singles because I knew that was unlikely to be a victory and put her into 1 doubles with Ria Anand. And then I took our next freshman, who also was not going to have a victory in the singles lineup, and put her in the doubles lineup. And the same thing with our third singles. And we pushed up our doubles and we dominated in doubles. We took 3 wins in the doubles category.
I remember seeing that. Yes,
Right. So
I remember seeing that.
The flexibility of the players is definitely key to some of our victories this season. In addition, the girls grew pretty close. We have some big personalities on the team, and the freshmen really folded in nicely with the rest of the team, and they're like a family. And when you're traveling 14 girls strong on varsity, it's very important that everybody gets along and supports each other both on and off the court.
Yeah, for me, since we've doing PrepZone, and one thing that I found that's been so interesting is that when, and I know you probably know this as a coach, and I guess from outside it's something new to me, is that when you get the talent, you don't really look at them as freshmen. You just look at them as where they are in their, athletic career.
Correct.
And then someone that, like you said, you might have a junior who should be playing in the JV. You might have a freshman who should be there.
Yes.
So it's just about really putting the people in the best place they could succeed. Is that how you look at it as well?
Yeah, tennis is unique in that sense because we have a lot of interest in Westport. Tennis is a really big sport here. There's a lot of enthusiasts. A lot of the girls' parents play tennis. We really could have in many years accommodated a freshman team, to be honest, but we don't have the capacity, again, going back to the idea that boys and girls are competing for the courts. And you have very avid pickleball players all over Westport. So the town farms courts are all eaten up by pickle as well.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the capacity to have a freshman team. So in tennis, you have talent that comes in, tournament players that are playing all the way through the year, 12 months a year, who will come up and your top player may be a freshman. And that poses a challenge for a coach because you don't really look at their age. Tatum is 14 years old. She's very young compared to, my senior players like a Chloe Francis or Sarah Marin, who were 17, 18 years old. There's a difference in maturity levels there, but then there's the difference in play levels.
Right.
And then there's the difference in maturity as a tournament player. And so instead of looking at their age, you want to sort of put them in where they fit best.
Correct.
Other coaches may not, they have the luxury of being able to, start in a freshman program and move through. Yeah. But every sport has these superstars that may be freshmen.
Yeah. And it's like, you also, if you take a freshman, and one thing I found too is that, the kids kind of know, they're practicing every day. They know who should be the top player by themselves, right?
Totally.
And it's like, and if you take a player, like you said, a superstar, and you keep them in a lower team, they might not get, encouraged to return to the team in more years, right?
Correct. That's right.
Because you got to keep that.
That's
and
right.
that leads me to my last question, which is is tennis, and I've seen this quite a bit where, the kids, when they want to play in college, they kind of veer away from high school. Is tennis still very much where the kids want to play it for the high school?
Yes, this is a really interesting question, actually. So there is that pressure if you want to get recruited to play tennis. Tennis is an incredibly competitive sport on the collegiate level. And in many teams, and I can talk about Princeton because, my son is there as a freshman, and I look at the universal tennis rankings of the kids that are playing racket sports, including squash and tennis at Princeton, and it's a very international sport, right? So you're not just drawing from the top players all over the United States, you're also drawing from the top players internationally. It becomes unbelievably competitive. So to go back in time, we had a girl on the team, a young woman now, obviously her name is Amelia Galen. She was my number one singles player when I inherited the team from Paco. Her junior year, she did not play for Staples because she was building up her universal tennis ranking, her UTR. And then the higher your UTR is, it opens a world up for where you can be recruited.
Yeah.
The same is true for Allie Francis, who also played for us, who's now playing at Trinity. So these girls are at the top of their game, competing to build up their universal tennis ranking, and sometimes it doesn't lend itself to playing on a high school team. And then you have players like on the boys' side, like a Ty Brunetti, for example, who played all the way through in tennis on the high school team for Chris, the varsity boys coach, and also was recruited to, Villanova, now is transferred to play for Vanderbilt. And so it depends on the family. It depends on what your ultimate goal is, but it is always a very large challenge for a high school tennis coach to try to get the biggest talent in the town
and keep it.
Encourage them to continue playing on a tennis team in high school, because then you have the sportsmanship, the camaraderie that you don't necessarily have if you're just building your UTR up as an individual player. So I think high school sports are it's such an indelible plus for young players, because you learn how to compete on a team and compete for something bigger than yourself. And that's one of those lifetime skills that you can't develop if you're just out there on your own.
Yeah, and I think it takes there's so many lessons you can take from being part of a team, right?
100%.
I mean, you depend on people, and it's like you said, it's almost a compromise when you look at a player who maybe won here and go to a different lineup there. They're kind of sacrificing for the better of the team.
Correct.
And that's a life lesson that you're not going to get if you're out there by yourself.
Exactly right.
So I mean, I think it's amazing, and you look at the tennis, and that's why I want to ask that question, because it seems like all sports are going that way now.
Yes.
Everybody's kind of they want to do their own thing because they feel like, but that high school sport, especially at Staples, seems still to be going strong.
Absolutely. And we have really strong players. Even if you look at the freshmen who have competed in tournaments between Tatum and Amelia Berkowitz and Anya Gandhi, all of those girls are competing 12 months in the year. They're freshmen, and they came out for the team, and I think they're better for it. And it's different. Playing indoor tournaments is very different than playing on our outdoor courts at Staples. You have a lot of different, climate issues. You have the wind, you have the sun, you have cracks on the court. Very different than a controlled environment in an intensity kind of situation. But nonetheless, it's a really positive experience for everybody, I think.
It is. And then I want to throw this nugget in there, when we do this prep zone, and I hear a lot from people who left the school.
Yes.
Right, knowing, man, and they're giving to our channel so much because they figure out that was kind of the best time they had of the sport.
100%.
Right, when they were playing with their friends and wearing their S.
Yep.
Right, I mean, so that speaks volume to what you guys are doing day to day.
Right, and I think it speaks a lot to a lot of the other coaches at Staples who, as we mentioned before, to be a coach at Staples is a huge honor and privilege. That's how I view it. I've done a lot in my career, but one of my favorite things is being with young girls and being able to be in person and impart a lot of lessons. I'm very much into the girls' mental health. I brought in a psychologist for the New York Knicks my first year. We did a session with him on how to deal with, how to get through anxiety and stress on a court. And I did my own mental health session with the girls. And you recognize how much stress these kids are under. I definitely see it all the way from JV to varsity. But the other coaches at Staples recognize the same challenges, and I think they try to give the kids such an unbelievable experience that, looking back, even in my team sport experiences, nothing rivaled my high school experiences on the lacrosse fields and on the tennis team. It's something that I hold very dear, even playing Division I squash in college. It's so unique, and you really think back to that feeling, and you think it's going to last forever when you're a kid, and it's does. Really in a split second. It goes, and you just want to sort of suck the marrow out of the bone of life. I used to say to my kids.
Yeah, because then you look back. I mean, I played tennis and football. It's and I remember the last football huddle where the coach said, listen, most of you, this would be the last time you'll
Yes.
ever put a shoulder pad on. And that was for me.
Yep.
At the time, I didn't think it was,
No,
but it
you're like-
was.
because you think it lasts forever. You
Yeah.
have this invincibility complex
Yeah,
that you think
exactly.
it's forever.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, and I want to just go back to, you mentioned about health, and I know,
Yes.
and the mental health of this. So, the successful programs in Staples, and I'm finding this as I talk to the coaches, are really focusing on the mental health.
Yes. Yes.
And I want to mention the football team because I had them on here, and they go to extremes where like a lot of their coaches, like they focus as much on the mental health of the kids
100%.
as they do on the playing health of the kids.
Yes.
So in your experience, what I mean, of course, it's very important, but the importance and how does you see it playing out on the courts and on the fields, and how do you think it helps so much, and the negatives of not doing something like that?
So, I think tennis is the perfect sport. It's a perfect example because, again, you're out there on your own. And oftentimes the girls are playing, if they're playing singles, they're playing against themselves as another opponent against their opponent. And in tennis, if you get in your head too much or you get in your own way, your game really can fall apart. And it's a life lesson, right? Because how many times have we, your own narrative is very much your thought process. And I tell the girls that what you think is not a fact, right? We need to focus on external factors that we can really hone in on. So for example, let's say you're playing and your serve may not be exactly what you want it to be that particular game. So you double fault and then you double fault again. You can get so much in your head that you can end up double faulting the game. And how do you end up stopping a player from imploding essentially and staying focused on what's important? And then you build these skill sets, this sports psychology on just focusing on one thing. Okay, maybe your toss is off, or maybe it's your footwork that may be off, or maybe your racket isn't back far enough. Let's just focus on something tangible. Pull yourself out of your negative mind frame, out of your thoughts that aren't facts. Like, oh my God, what if I tank this, or I have 4 double faults and then I have, it's tennis. If you calculate what's going to happen, you can immediately start to get very tense.
Yep.
And in tennis, if you get tight and tense, you're not hitting the ball the way that you should hit it, right? And then you really can start to see your mental game blow up your tennis game. And so the question is, how do you focus on these tangible things to pull yourself out of your own way?
Yeah.
And that has been incredibly important because the same thing is true for public speaking, right?
Yes,
right?
100%.
Right. So one of the biggest fears in the United States, if you were to ask, if we had 100 people in this room with us right now, Steve, and we asked them, 80% of the people would say public speaking is their number one fear. And it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
because
8 to 10.
you're putting yourself out there.
Exactly. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's analogous to the tennis game. So all of a sudden, let's say you're speaking and then you get in your own head and you start to sweat and you worry that you're going to panic. It's the same skill set that you give these girls, and they can take this skill set of pulling yourself out of that negative thought process and into the moment of something tangible in a distraction to get into and back into flow and into a groove to perform the best that you can, no matter whether it's on an exam, a public talk, or a tennis game.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's like it's everything is in your head.
Totally.
Right? It's like, and sometimes I say, well, when you think negative thoughts, we believe the negative and we don't believe the positive.
Correct. That's right. And our thought process becomes, it impacts our actions. And that's very important to recognize that your thoughts don't have to impact your actions. You can accept your thoughts and understand that your brain is going to feed you 40,000 thoughts a day, and you don't have to buy into them. You can just try to distract yourself and get into flow. And you'll find that athletes that are in their flow state, and you see it on the basketball court, you see it on the football field, you see it in soccer, you see it across the board. And on the tennis court, the athlete that gets into flow and can ignore all of the inner chatter, those are our top athletes.
Yeah, it seems like it's the flow, the momentum. It's like
Totally.
intangibles that you can't really like put,
Correct.
and you can see like why that's why upsets happen all the time.
Yes.
Right? You think there's no way this team's going to win, how that player's going to pull it out,
Correct.
right? And they continue to do that.
Yes.
And I feel like, and we're focusing on tennis here. Like I said, when I played, I do remember like you being in that stage out there, and like you said, it can get into your head really quick.
You can.
And at that point, it's like it can go downhill really fast. And like, and just because following like tennis players sometimes get the rap of their like nutcases, right? Because you see them throwing the rackets and all that
Yes.
kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
And talking to themselves a lot.
Yes,
Is that
totally.
something that you kind of encourage on the court for them to talk to themselves and do something like
As
that?
long as it's positive self-talk. I've had a lot of players over the time that I've been coaching that will negative self-talk, and that can be incredibly detrimental to their performance. But we taught them, I went through in the beginning of the year ways to look at the point, and if you didn't like the point, you flush it. So it's a 4-room idea. Okay.
Okay, so walk me through that.
All right, so it's like a 4-room ideology for tennis players. So you prepare, and we did this at Princeton on the squash team. Like we do a mental preparation. You actually walk yourself through a victorious situation. Like and every athlete, no matter what sport you play, in their first room, they need to have mental preparation. So that may be your mud room, okay? So you go into the mud room, you envision a victory, you envision a positive outcome. Oftentimes when we envision a negative outcome, and I can tell you, like on my lacrosse team, we played the Long Island Championship. We were really big. Long Island and lacrosse go together. So we were the girls lacrosse team, and we all were freaked out. We were playing against another team, and we envisioned all the negatives. This was in the high school level, and we ended up losing, and we should have won. And I remember we were all in this funk, and it really played into the final outcome in high school. And I remember that, it's an indelible mark in my head. So you get into your mud room and then you walk down the hall. And this is like, I tell the girls, take your time between the points, right? You don't have to, all of a sudden you double fall. Don't go to the next point and then serve it right away. Bounce the ball. Give yourself a positive affirmation. It's very, very important. If the point you don't like what happens, flush it down the toilet. That's when you go to the bathroom. That's another room. Flush it and just prepare yourself again by walking back through the rooms. Envisioning positively through the mudroom, walking down the hallway by bouncing the ball, then getting up and like preparing yourself and going through. And if it's a victory, then you take that positive feeling from the one point to the next point. And it's, so it's really this psychological envisioning of positivity that has the best effect on our players. And, it's interesting because I think VJ is very aware. Like VJ as an athletic director, I really, really appreciate him because
he's been great. He's absolutely
been incredible. And I think that he looks at the total athlete, and he's very fair when it comes to no matter what program it is, whether it's sailing or football, no matter if there's 5 kids in a program or 45, the entire athlete is very important to him. And I appreciate that. And he recognizes the importance of mental health. And I think going forward, that is going to lend itself tremendously to the success of all of the programs that we have at Staples.
I couldn't agree more because, like I said, one common theme that I'm hearing with all these programs that are successful is mental.
Yes.
Right. Let's talk about, are the kids performing well? Are they, how is the stress level? How do we flush that out? I mean, even Football Story had right before the championship, they turned off the lights and they did exactly what you just said.
Yes.
They envisioned
Correct.
a good outcome to the game.
Correct. It sets you up for that. And I really believe in music also. Like on the tennis program, I always let them play music. I think it's really, really important because it gets you back into that flow state, right? It's difficult to be listening to a song being blasted. Like the girls love the Pitch Perfect soundtrack, so we're playing that constantly. And they know the music.
Right.
So you can't really sing along with music while you're practicing and also think negative thoughts. It pulls you out of your own way.
It absolutely does. It's like, I like to think that music is the dessert of life.
I agree with that completely.
Right? It just sweetens it up. It gets you in a good mood. It's just 100%. Like it absolutely does. Now, can you share like maybe a funny or a good story about this season? Like an internal story that's not too personal, but you can share with the audience. Like this happened. This was a really cool moment this season.
I'm trying to think. I mean, we had a lot of amazing moments. I think senior day was really an incredible day for us. I think the girls, we only have 2 seniors. So this is the
and it's Chloe and
Sarah Marin.
Sarah, got it, okay.
It's interesting because one of the reasons that it was such a great day for us is Sarah Marin has been on this team for, this is, I think, her 2nd year with me on the team. Mm-hmm. She's a very reserved kid. And she really has come out of her shell quite a bit this season and is laughing along with the team and is a really, really incredible teammate. And she was really very much in our senior day with Chloe, and they were being celebrated, and the girls really go out of their way to celebrate the other girls on their team. And for me as a coach, I can't think of anything better than the girls being 100% behind their teammates. I think that's another life lesson, right? Because it's not even the competition. It was just the celebration of the accomplishments of these girls. Chloe's going off to Syracuse. Sarah's going off to the University of Illinois, Urbana. They made all of these signs. They did all of these incredible things for them. They had this huge, buffet. Our girls really like the snack table. They had this huge buffet.
Yes, they're great. They are, and I always get offered when I go, so that's probably something that keep me coming back. That's for sure.
We have we have the Michelin star snack table at the girls'
It is really cool.
Games.
Yes.
But they had, a Carvel cake with the girls' faces on it, and it was really a lovely day where everyone felt so upbeat. And the other thing that the girls did was they celebrated the seniors on the other team, which I love.
That's nice.
Also.
That's really cool.
So
Yeah.
one of our moms bought flowers for the seniors on the West Hill team, and we presented 4 flowers to them. And there's a lot of sportsmanship that I really like and feel very proud of as a coach. And celebrating the girls that aren't necessarily the loudest or the biggest personalities, to me, is such a win for us as a unit.
Yeah, it is because, we were talking about it, and that those are kind of things you remember for the rest of your life.
Definitely.
Right? You take it with you, and you're like, man, like, and
Yes.
I'm a big fan of the show The Office.
Yes, yes.
And I'll never forget Ed. I think it was the Ed Helms line that said, "I wish that there was a way to know that I'm in the good old days before you leave them."
I know.
Right?
That's like that Billy Joel song.
Yes.
These are the days to remember.
Days to
right?
remember,
It
yeah.
is. I mean,
It's
you
like-
don't realize it. And it's really funny, Steve, because it was the era when I graduated from high school. My mom and someone else, they were videotaping us leaving the high school, and I was in my gown, and I was with my boyfriend and my group of girlfriends, and we were leaving, and my mom says on the tape, "The kids don't realize this is really an end of an era." And
It is.
captured on the tape. And I remember rewatching that with my kids at different points of my life, different touch points of my life, and being like, God, my mom like encapsulated exactly that. Like it was the end of the era, and you don't realize it at the time. And now we have it on film.
I know. It's like, that's why we take as many pictures as we can, and sometimes you just put them where you save because you just never know. And for me, I know we're parents can share this. Sometimes like Google will send me old pictures of my kids as a young, and I'm like, I'm not ready for this today, right? Some days you're like, because you're gonna break down. You're like, yeah, very
It's
emotional,
incredible,
very
and
emotional.
It's funny, and that's one of the privileges of being a high school coach, because you're in that incredible time in these kids' lives that you want to create the best memories that they can create. I spoke to Nancy Lawley, who, do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Nancy Lawley she's a pro at Intensity. She now heads up the pickleball program there.
All right.
She's a tennis pro, but she used to be the tennis coach before Paco at Staples. And she has shared with me that girls have come back from graduating college, graduating their graduate school, having kids, and coming up to Nancy and saying, these were some of the best times of their lives because of the memories that they create. And Nancy said to me, before this, because I'm a pickleball player too, she said, I know you have a rebuilding year, but you want to try to create the best memories for these girls. And then she shared those stories with me.
I know.
Right?
You can't. I mean, you can't really put a price tag on any of this stuff. Like I said, I remember like every single high school, memory that I have was just so great.
Yes.
Right, and you wouldn't trade it for anything that happened because
Correct.
it makes you into the person you are today.
Exactly.
It does. So it is so amazing. I mean, this has been so much fun having you.
Love it,
I mean, we're definitely gonna do this again.
sure.
I definitely want to go more into this mental health because I think that, and one thing that got to me a little bit, and as we wrap up, was they had the breast cancer awareness for
Yes.
for the baseball team
Yes.
today, and I was talking to Doctor. I'm gonna botch his name. I'm not even gonna say his name because I'm not gonna really say that. But anyway, he was talking to me about. I asked him what's the experience about, and he said, "Listen, when I started doing this, everything was silent. Nobody talked about it.
Yes.
It was viewed as a weakness, like there was something wrong with me because I had this disease.
Yes.
And he goes, and now it's out there, and everyone's seeking help for it. He goes, when somebody their arm hurts, they go right for it. They do it, and that's because what we do.
Correct.
And I think we need to get to a place where mental health is looked at the same way.
I totally agree with you. I actually have dedicated a large portion of my career to this, like on the outside, not on the tennis court, more so in my professional life where, I had girls this year have panic attacks on the court. Like they are under more stress than ever. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more we highlight it, the more these scholar athletes who are oftentimes leaders in the classroom can talk openly about things that are bothering them, the more we destigmatize it for our society and we address it. And, just looking at it because I'm a women's health specialist, girls are socialized a little bit more to be more open about their emotions. When you come to a male athlete that's suffering from anxiety, that is buttoned up much more often than it is in our female athletes. And not to say it's not an equal problem, but it's a gender neutral issue, anxiety and stress.
Agree.
And we need to, promote and encourage our athletes and all of our students to discuss this very rampant problem out in the open, because then once you hit it head on and you treat it early and give them techniques to be able to control the physiologic reactions to stress and anxiety, they realize It's not something out of their control. This is something that they can deal with effectively and talk about it out loud. And how do we come together as a community?
Right, and it's not a weakness.
100%
It's not a weak. It's just something that and I end all my things with be kind to everyone, because you just never know what someone's going through.
100%.
You just don't know. I mean, everyone's facing a battle you know nothing about.
I agree.
Right, so it's like I definitely want us to tackle that some more, because I think this is like, if we can change one life, right, get someone out, and that's totally worth our time. Just like the doctor said, I agree.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So thank you so much. But before I
you.
go, I want to do some quick hits, personal stuff with you.
Okay.
Okay. People get to know you a little bit, so we'll get some fun stuff here before we go. All right. So texting or calling?
Texting.
Your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
What is the last series you binge watched?
Summer House on Bravo. Oh God, Steve.
It's okay. Salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Cake or ice cream?
Cake.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Beach or sightseeing?
Beach.
Best college memory?
Oh my God. There are so many. They all involve like a very close knit group of girlfriends that I had that were my bridesmaids in my wedding, who I'm still friends to this day, and I'm going back to my college for a reunion. But
Awesome.
Probably graduation, one of my closest friends, her dad was the anchor of Good Morning America.
Oh, okay.
And we taped Good Morning America at my graduation. We all threw up our hats and yelled Good Morning America, which was wild.
That's really cool.
And we have that to this day. But it's the friendships, hands down, that I made that are the most important and dear thing to me out of college.
Awesome. The thing you're most proud of?
My kids.
One thing you can't live without. We know family. Other than family, what's one thing you can't live without?
Coffee.
Which superhero would you pick to be your best friend, and why?
Which superhero? Probably Wonder Woman, because I'm like slightly obsessed with Gal Gadot is like one of my I love her, and I loved how like amazing Wonder Woman as a series was. Yeah. So and here's another reason I loved Wonder Woman, because it's not Marvel, right?
No, it is a little bit now, but it really isn't. It's part of it. Yeah.
The irony with Wonder Woman was that the people that made Wonder Woman did not think that a female protagonist, this is a true story, would garner a box office sensation.
Really?
And so they were very hesitant to put out like Wonder Woman, the first one. And then the Wonder Woman initial movie grossed more than Deadpool, and Ryan Reynolds reached out to Gal Gadot to congratulate her because it grossed more money than Deadpool, which is also such an incredible series.
It is.
And I don't know if maybe Deadpool, because I love Ryan Reynolds too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The two of them as my best friends. But I always thought a strong female protagonist is something I can get behind.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then this is the last one here. If you could go back and relive one day in your life, either relive it or watch it from above, which day would that be?
That's a very poignant question. I miss my maternal grandparents tremendously. So it would definitely be just an average dinner to have like a little bit more time with my grandparents.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And before you finish, I want the audience to know, like, the first time we met, it was in a rec soccer field.
Yes.
And you were wearing a T-shirt that said "Mother of Dragons."
Oh my God. Yes.
And when I saw that, like, her and I are going to get along.
We're
going to get along.
That was the show I had binged at that point, which was Game of Thrones.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Big fans as well. Dr. Wider, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.